This is TWiT.
Let's talk about, since we were talking about facial recognition, we'll get to your story in a second, but we should set it up with this story from Madison Square Garden. I think probably a lot of people saw it. It got a lot of coverage. Mom was bringing her daughter to Radio City Music Hall the weekend after Thanksgiving. It was a Girl Scout field trip to see the Christmas show with the Rockettes and everything. But while her daughter, other members of the Girl Scout troop, and their mothers got to go to the show, this mother, Kelly Conlon, was not allowed in. Face recognition caught her as she entered. Security guards approached her as she got into the lobby. She said, I heard them say, woman with long dark hair and gray scarf. She was asked her name, asked to produce identification. They said, face recognition picked you up. She says she posed no threat, but the guards kicked her out with the explanation they knew she was an attorney. They knew my name before I told them. They knew the firm I was associated with before I told them, and they told me I was not allowed to be there. MSG Entertainment, which owns Madison Square Garden, was apparently...
Which is a bilious company huge, with bilious owners.
Huge.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah. She works for a law firm, Davis, Saperstein, and Solomon, which has been involved in a personal injury lawsuit against a restaurant venue owned by MSG. She says, I don't practice in New York. I'm not an attorney that works on any cases against MSG, but all attorneys from her firm are banned, and they used face recognition to recognize those attorneys and block them from entering. That's their right, isn't it?
Hey,
you can keep somebody out of the investigation, right?
Yeah. The whole scheme, says one of her partners, is a pretext for doing collective punishment on adversaries who would dare sue MSG in their multi-billion-dollar network.
Well, I mean, what's wrong with this is the human piece, is the Dolans, and I've worked with them, and I had Cablevision for a while, and I worked on one of their cable networks here in New Jersey. It's an awful, awful company. It's a terrible company.
And so the policy reflects poorly on them. Yeah.
How
you
you
will never see the Rockettes again, Jeff.
Well, but speaking of which, that is the most boring thing on earth, even with the camels.
It's a tradition. Knock it off.
They
have camels too.
Oh,
wow. I was just a mom taking my daughter to see a Christmas show, she's told NBC New York. I did wait outside. It was embarrassing. It was mortifying. Of course it was.
Well, her daughter was inside. She was outside. That's just awful.
Well, the thing is, if this was... Why wasn't she privy to this information? Is it because she's too low on the totem pole, if you will? Is that the phrase?
MSG says we told that law firm twice they would not be allowed in, that they knew what the policy was. So they said, she ought to know. She's not going to come in. By the way, they are now challenging them because MSG has a liquor license, which requires them to admit members of the public unless there are people who would be disruptive or constitute a security threat. So they may actually have grounds to get them, or cost them their liquor
there's
license.
There's a lot that's covered under like, hey, it's a private business. We refuse the right to serve people, right?
Yes.
We have the right to refuse service.
Yeah.
But there's also the government. There's a public interest in most members of the public being allowed to go to places that they expect to be allowed in. Like this is a classic issue of public rights versus private rights, right? And the new angle here is the ability to enforce it against more people using this kind of technology to actually limit them from coming in. So now you're saying you can actually, because usually if you're going to, what's the word I'm looking for? Discriminate against an individual person, you've had actual interactions with them, right? Like, they're James Corden in your whatever restaurant he got banned from, right? So, and there's a reason, right?
He apologized, by the way, and it's been allowed back in, I just want to say.
They're not charged in a court of law, but they're like, well, he's behaved badly. They don't.
Yeah, you behave like a jerk. It's their right to but she wasn't behaving like a jerk, I guess. But
here's the issue. Their contention could be that anybody who behaves like a jerk, like someone who's a jerk to them on Twitter, Does that mean they shouldn't, now that you have easy access to this imagery and facial recognition, at what level do you, and this is a public-private interest kind of claim. And so I think this should go all the way to the courts. And I really want to see what happens here, because this is exactly the sort of governmental policy we need to start thinking about.
Well, you got to remember we have a Supreme
Musk killing accounts on Twitter.
You got to remember we have a Supreme Court that said it's okay not to bake a cake for a gay couple, or
yes, but we still have. I don't love our current Supreme Court, but this is what we're set up to do. So we should probably do it. And knowing that this sort of thing is going to come up a lot in the next few years, maybe we should think about our court
just think about it. What if the Dolans decide, we don't like podcasters.
Right.
We're just going to block all podcasters. They own.
So then we get to the question of a place of public accommodation.
Right.
And which is a restaurant, which they can do, but is there a point at which it's no, this is truly public, you have to let people in? The same question will come with Twitter. The same issues get raised with Musk killing accounts of journalists there. And we get our up in arms, and I'm up in arms about it because he's just a jerk. But he had the right to do it. He could throw people off Twitter. He owns it now.
I feel like a physical place somehow seems like it should be more open than, say, a social network. But I guess that's just an old-fashioned point of view, that Twitter is no different than Madison
Well, I don't
Square
want
Garden.
Twitter to be named a place of public accommodation that must be open, because that would force you. That's what the Republicans want to do. The Republicans want to say, you must carry our noxious speech. You are not allowed to moderate. You do not have a freedom of expression around.
Is it different if the Dolans decided we're not going to allow Donald Trump into the Radio City Music Hall? Is that different from Twitter saying we're not going to allow Donald Trump to post on Twitter?
That's the question. That's exactly
Twitter
the question.
is less of a, the government has not said that there is no rules around social media. We have not said that everyone has a right to be on social media. The government has, through liquor licenses, there is a recognition in our laws that people are generally allowed into places where the public can gather, right? Whether it's a coffee shop, yes, you can charge tickets, but we have established laws around that. And so to be kicked out of that requires, one, you have to do something bad, or you have to, violate a policy. And it's done not through some mechanism across a large place. It's done at an individual level as you try to walk in the door. Now, if this person, I suppose, would it make it better if everybody who was doing security at Madison Square Garden had a list of photos of all of the lawyers, and then they were like, okay? The ease at which you can do this makes it a little more concerning, I guess.
Don't miss All About Android every week. We talk about the latest news, hardware, apps, and now all the developer-y goodness happening in the Android ecosystem. I'm Jason Howell, also joined by Ron Richards, Florence Ion, and our newest co-host on the panel, Wen Tu Dao, who brings her developer chops. Really great stuff. We also invite people from all over the Android ecosystem to talk about this mobile platform we love so much. Join us every Tuesday, All About Android on TWiT.tv.